The Lost Signals present
I see the gruel is ready.
a celebration of international horror and another Halloween sequel
Michael Myers is outside.
with in-depth analysis,
تو پسر خوب هستی.
adult content,
Girlfriend to
adult language,
Oh my god.
and spoilers.
Сталкеру нельзя входить в комнату.
Join us.
Aren't I lucky I got a chunky bit?
Hello and welcome back to MOTS-O-Ween 2019. Ooh, scary. We are going this entire year. We have been doing foreign language films and trying to concentrate on expanding our film vocabulary. So we're going to continue that for MOTS-O-Ween, our palette, if you will. Sure. And so for tonight's episode, we have decided to do an Iranian language film called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, directed by Anna Lily Almanpour. I am going to be your host, Steve Ramosi, joined tonight by Jonathan Mezer.
MOTS-O-Ween in August. He's still recording, but who knows? It might be 90 degrees in October. Climate change.
They never needed to know. And Scott Thurlow.
Oh, Vampires of Iran.
So I realize as I'm saying this that I kind of neglected asking if anyone had a funny logline. Does anyone have a funny logline?
Go with what I just said. How about that?
What did you just say?
I said, oh, Vampires of Iran.
All right, we'll go with that. Vampires of Iran. So let's get started. I am going to start off with the plot of this movie. The film centers around a kind of vengeful vampire who she wanders the streets of, I believe it's called Bad City.
Yep.
And kind of looks for men who are treating women badly and then murders them. So our main character, Iran, I believe. Arash, I'm sorry. Is just kind of there. He has this father who's abusing drugs, and he's kind of, because of that, he's into the local drug slinger for a good amount of money. This dealer ends up getting murdered by the vampire at some point, and he goes and steals a bunch of his shit. And then you kind of see a bunch of scenes of, like, very beautifully done, him going through life, and the girl, who is the name of the vampire, also like stalking her victims, and they kind of weave together eventually, like through these scenes of like kind of partying and listening to music and all this stuff. And as they come together, they kind of find a mutual affectation for one another.
Yes.
I would say. And then they end up going off into the night together. Like, when I first saw this movie, I was really impressed by it, but I think the more I think about it, I was mostly really impressed by the stylistic aspects because it's a beautifully done stylistic movie.
It's
but
in black and white, by the way.
Yes, it is in black and white, and like over the plot and narrative aspects of it, I suppose. There is a plot there. Not to say that there's not, but it's pretty surface level. Yeah, it's like boy has druggy father, boy gets pissed off about that, boy goes out and does some drugs, and then him and the vampire get together and kind of go through life. There's also a street urchin who shows up, like a little kid who's literally the street urchin in the credits, as far as I could tell.
Yes.
It's True Romance meets Twilight.
Kind of.
See, I thought of it about True Romance, especially the drug scene when he steals the drugs. But yeah, I mean, like, that's sort of fitting. You're right, though. Like, I think I feel the same way because we watched it together via screening the other day, you and me, Steve-O. So like, yeah, I was quite impressed with it, but narratively, I might have to, having mulled it over a bit, give it a decent to strong 2. I don't think I can give it full points. It was a lot of, I don't want to say it was style over substance, but more style than substance.
Yeah.
I think might be more fitting there. So yeah, it was fine, and it sort of like leaves not a hanging ending, I suppose. They drive off into the night and credits, like, pretty much. Right. And it's like you're not sure like how the relationship is going to go, if it's going to sustain itself or if it's not.
It's not.
I mean, I think
she's going to eat him.
The film wanted to be a question mark, I think, but yes, it's quite heavily implied that it won't turn out well. So I'm just saying, like, yeah, it was fine enough. Like, it wasn't as vignette-ish as some other stuff that we might have discussed in that sense, but I'm just saying, overall, I feel as if 2 is a score that it should get here.
Yeah, it handled its narrative fairly well. I actually thought that the one of the subplots of the father getting off of drugs, falling back into it, forcing a local prostitute to do drugs with him against her will, and being killed by the vampire. He had a very satisfactory arc. I understand the motives of the vampire. She's lonely. She's a vampire. They do a good job of of demonstrating her morality versus her hunger. And she falls for this guy, and the guy's not a good guy, and I don't see it ending well.
I mean, he's an okay guy, but not great.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think he's necessarily not a good guy. He's just not like the best guy by any means.
I think that he does everything that morally wise she despises. He sells drugs. He is fairly forceful to her at parts. And in a sense, I think that he will inevitably, and like, he kicks out his father. She doesn't see this, but like, he throws his father out on the streets when he's just fed up with him. So I think that he's going to eventually do something to trigger the vampire within her.
So here's an interesting, I'm going to disagree with you a bit on that. I don't think that she really gives a shit about drugs or any of that stuff. I think her morality centers on women being treated poorly.
That's true.
I don't think that she really cares about any of that other stuff necessarily. And to be honest, I don't think that she would care that he kicked his father out because she ends up killing him.
But I think that it's more towards the thing that he shows a morally questionable side to him that I think is going to manifest.
Sure, I would agree with that. Yeah. But and like, I think that it's whether, like, so you said that I think you said he's forceful towards her at certain points. I see it more as being like he's forward. Like, I don't think he disrespects her at any point in this necessarily.
Well, the first time they meet, he's fucking high on E, by the way. So like, his actions are not quite under control, but certainly it's
right. And like, he like wraps her with his cape, and like, but he doesn't like do anything that she says no to. Yeah, but, like, you know,
at the end when he wants to leave, I felt he got not heavily aggressive, but he got aggressive towards her, which again, I think that his actions throughout shadow that at a certain point their relationship's not going to work out, and not to his good health.
Sure, no, I get you. I don't disagree with that either. But so maybe that'll be more character stuff when we get to it. But I'm just saying, like, plot-wise, I think it's a fine, strong 2 even, but not quite a 3, given the events and what it is contained.
Narrative-wise, it actually kind of felt like an abrupt ending to me. Not too much so, but it felt that there was more to the story that was there, and it just...
I see you.
I mean, it was missing a scene or two within it. But nonetheless, I agree with you on the 2.
I can see that. I think based on just my recollection of the plot, I have to give this a 2, because I remember coming away from this movie like, this movie's awesome. I'm going to give this a 10, like, you know, and then thinking about it a little bit more and saying, there's not as much to the plot as I initially like saw or like thought in my head, but there's certainly enough there for 2. I don't think it's enough for 3. I'm going to agree with you guys. I'm going to give it a 2 as well.
Yeah.
And we will go on to themes with Ian.
like many other horror films, especially with women as the powerful quote-unquote monsters, it is a revenge fantasy served where you have a powerful female character, especially coming from a society which doesn't necessarily promote feminist values as much as America does. Even though this is even though it's a foreign language, it is partly filmed in America.
Yeah. True. I think Elijah Wood was one of the producers.
Yeah. He was.
But it still takes place in Iran. And it's a female vampire taking out really bad guys. Whether they're people I'm really happy to see go, like the pimp drug dealer, or people I actually felt kind of bad for in the heroin addicted father. Mm-hmm. But and I think that's necessarily there's the love part, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't really buy into their love story.
It's sort of like an afterthought to like what you just said as a thematic element.
But I think that it does what it's doing very well. And she is dressed in the traditional garb. It's not a burqa or hijab. It's actually a specific type. I looked it up. I can't think of the name right now. But and she wears it as a cape in a sense of a vampire.
Like a vampire cloak, yeah.
It's taking the kind of traditional vampire tropes, but putting it in a unique setting. And I thought it worked pretty well for what I think it's trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't have much more to add because I think it might be a simple thematic element there, but still nevertheless, like, a solidly done one and an important one, in fact. But there's not a lot to it. However, it was very well handled, so I will probably give it a pretty strong 1. And yeah, like, just as you said, like, some of the other stuff, like his father being a drug addict and, like, his situation, it was there, but it wasn't, like, necessarily commented upon as much. But it was still, like, part of it.
If I may add on to that, I think it's interesting to see the Sin City version of an Iranian city there, where things are
it's all run down and shit.
It has like severe social problems there, and not in the way that the West might expect. Like in very real and kind of, I feel, universal qualities of bad people doing bad things.
Yeah,
that's fair.
The movie really takes this idea of a more free and almost westernized Iran, as opposed to what probably most Americans think of the country, right? Like, and Iran has this history of being one of the most like progressive countries almost in the world until fairly recently. Like I think the 70s or 80s.
I believe it was 78, which was the revolution there.
And like, there's just some fascinating stuff, and like, clearly a lot of that culture still exists there because it wasn't that long ago that things kind of changed. Yeah. So you get that idea from this, and like, I like the Sin City parallel, like the Bad City idea of like, yeah, there's still these things going on, and you get to see them in a very stylized way. And yes, I think one of the main driving forces of this is like the idea of women getting revenge on men that try to take advantage of them, and I think that is done pretty well. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 1 for that, for sure.
I just have one. There's to the Sin City argument. There's a ditch that keeps reappearing with just dead bodies.
Yeah,
it does play a plot point in later on, but
I forgot about that. Yeah.
It's just like there's an absurdist quality to it as well, because I doubt that Iran actually has ditches with dead bodies just littered in them, but it's to the point of this very destitute, destructive world that they built.
Yeah.
Good call.
All right, so I think it's 1s all around, and Scotty, we're gonna go to antagonists with you.
So I've found myself saying this a lot this season, perhaps. And shall I go with toxic masculinity yet again? I'm not sure. Like, certainly it's a part of it. It's like it's, as we just said, it's woven into the plot, into the character of the girl who was never actually named. It's credited as the girl, the vampire, where she stalks men who are behaving badly, specifically towards women, and it sort of works out in a sense because she's a vampire. Like, she can eat them, and it's part of her ecology, I guess we'll say. So yeah,
Yeah.
man, like, you know, of course it sets up like the drug dealer pimp, and he's being an asshole, of course. So then he gets eaten early, and then it's sort of that is where the true romance sort of thing comes in, where Arash goes to his house and tries to like make amends, or I think he has to get his car back because he gave him the car to settle his father's drug debts, and then he finds the pimp guy dead, so he takes his stash and the money.
As you do. You do.
So like, I mean, like,
Can't blame him for that.
yeah, it's certainly not the girl that, like, you could say maybe she's antagonistic
No.
towards, but I don't think it's really the case. So yeah, like, just, don't be an asshole and treat women fairly, and maybe if one of them's a vampire, they won't kill you. Like, I don't know, man. Like, but I think like that's the most obviously antagonistic element to the film. So I think it was like portrayed pretty well, like within like the limited-ish amount of characters that were like overall in this film, and the ones who specifically embodied that. So
Yeah, I think that, as you mentioned earlier, Ian, I think that they do portray that antagonist, we'll say, toxic masculinity or whatever, really well in different ways throughout the film, and I think that's the strength of it, or the strength of this portrayal
I like
in
that.
this movie, is you get the scumbaggy drug dealer, but you also get the like father who you kind of feel bad for, and it's prevalent in both of these characters and their either unwillingness or inability to overcome their their toxicity, I guess, or like their
mindset.
shittiness.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a slight deviation off of, or give a different interpretation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Power fantasies are structured from people who wish to escape a situation. Both Arash and the vampire both are stuck within their situation there, and they're surrounded by people who want to prey upon them, whether it be vampires or whether it be drug dealers and pimps. You see it with the actually, it's really exemplified by the prostitute. Who, like, you're 30 now, don't you want to have a family, don't you want to escape? She's saving up to escape, but she's kept being dragged back into this world, and it's a shitty city to live in. Like, both of them are stuck, and they get out at the end.
They get out, but to what life?
Yeah, I mean, whether their self-destruction will catch up with them, or whether they'll
Break free
have
of
a
it somehow.
blissful Twilight ending.
I mean, that's a really good point.
Good call though, for sure.
That being said, I think we're all going to give it a 1.
Yeah, it's a pretty damn strong one on that front for me.
And let's move on to protagonists with me. And so I know there's probably going to be a good point made for Arash as the protagonist, but I really think it's the girl who is the protagonist. She is the one who's creating the story. She's the one who the story revolves around. She's the one that is the reason that this story exists. And I really like that she's mostly silent. She talks a little bit, but mostly it's her reactions to the world that we see. And I love that about her. You don't see her talk until she
Talks to the urchin.
talks to the little boy,
first.
the street urchin. I think I mentioned that when Scott and I watched this together, and I think I was like, "Oh, that's the first time she talked." Just like half an hour into the movie or something, and they have this great scene where she approaches. He's skateboarding down the street. She approaches him and says, "Like, are you a good boy?" And he says, "Yes." And she says, "Are you a good boy?" And then he says, "Yeah." Like he keeps saying it, and she's like, "I don't believe you. Like, be good." Or like she just basically scares. She's like a monster like that parents tell their kids about, but like in real life,
I can tear out your eyes.
Yeah,
Feed him to the dog.
exactly. Like she threatens him, and then she takes a skateboard and like uses it for most of the rest of the movie, which I thought was a good stylistic touch. But
What's funny is the piece of trivia that I read, because Amazon has the trivia stuff. It's kind of neat. The director did most of the skateboarding.
oh, really?
That's cool. Yeah, nice.
I mean,
They do look similar.
Yeah, they look very.
But yeah, so sorry, you can speak more about protagonists. Good.
I think it's both of them as the
You bastard.
hey,
I mean,
hey.
it's fine.
Hey.
I'm agreeing.
Hey.
All right. God.
Both of them as protagonists, because it's a love story in a lot of ways, and he can't escape his life. If it wasn't for her, she couldn't escape or didn't have the option for escape until he offered it to her in a sense of let's leave. So yeah, it's two people who are connected with each other and whose individual narratives brought them together.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, that's basically what I was going to say, and I do agree that I think it's both at once, or both can be protagonists. So, like, yes, while you're right, Steve-O, you follow the girl vampire story, and then Arash's, and then they sort of collide, and then it becomes both of them, like, intertwined. So I think I'm going to give them both credit. I think they both did a good job, especially, like you said, the girl acting as, like, she basically says a lot with facial or body language, like, and says very few spoken lines, and Arash is, like, sort of like, you know, kind of like this happy-go-lucky guy at first, but then you realize what his home situation is like, and he's trying to, like you said, he's stuck in this shitty town and trying to find any way to escape.
Stuck in a bad city.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think they both did a good job as characters and as portrayed by the actors, and give them both credit and give them one.
All right, sounds good. I think that's going to be ones all around for protagonists. Point of order, I suppose. I think I do agree with you guys that they are both protagonists in this, and,
Yes.
and I agree with most of what you said about them. So that's going to bring us to supporting. And Ian, why don't you
Take it
kick
away.
that off?
Okay. Well, the father is perhaps the most complex character in this and the most tragic. And I think that actually, probably the prostitute too, both of them in their weird love affair.
Yeah, they had
too.
this weird, like, secondary relationship,
Yeah.
like, almost parallel to
And
the...
as toxic as
yeah.
that could happen with the other two. But it really worked for me and actually kept me going through the film because I liked the two protagonists, but I felt that this storyline was deeper, and the father did an excellent job of depicting withdrawal. And he went through a tragic life. Everyone here went through a kind of a tragic life, aside from the pimp who played a good
Asshole, scumbag pimp. Yeah.
his sex tattooed on his throat.
It's motherfucking ridiculous.
Yeah, but like he's everything you want out of, like, in horror you want those characters that you don't have empathy with, that you want to see punished.
Yeah,
and he got punished, and he did his role perfectly.
and you saw like sex, the word like repeated.
It was like
several times
graffitied up on the
throughout
wall. Yeah, I noticed
throughout
that.
the movie.
Then I guess the little kid did a decent job for his role throughout of it. And it kind of, in a sense,
fine.
weird because he works as both the moral, because you see him look up to Arash initially, especially when he has the car, and he got out of hard work, and then when he sees him selling drugs, it's the disappointment, and it's kind of the morality there, and also reinforced by the girl vampire discussing it. So yeah, I think overall the secondary cast did a very good job, but specifically the parents.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like I said, like I just mentioned, that there's not many characters in this film. It's a small sort of like enclosed circle of cast. So yeah, like yes, I think certainly the his father and I guess it is implied, like if not outright shown, that he had a past history with the prostitute. Anyways, like they knew each other. He's used her services before, if you will. It's like yes, it was an interesting little like subplot there. I think they did a good job. And I guess the only other character was the sort of the rich younger woman that Arash, I guess, does like yard work for their family, and like she was at the party when he starts like when he has a drug stash. Yeah, so like she was there, she was fine. Like she didn't have a big role like in terms of plot, but she fit in there. Like it made sense to his life and his situation.
If I may, I think it makes sense for the overall aspect of Arash's character, which he steals the earrings and then gives it to the girl.
Yes, that's right.
It's him lusting after her, and again, I think it shows the darker side of him.
Now, you're right. To be fair, you said he wasn't forceful with girl/vampire, but when he was on E at the party, he tried to kiss what was her name that just said
Shada, I believe is her name,
right? And she's like, what are you doing? And so he does back off, but but again, you can make the point, or at least the film makes it clear that he was under the influence of drugs, but he still had that impulse and still tried to act upon it.
But that's like, so that's the thing. Like, I don't think this film is trying to say there's something wrong with trying to kiss somebody. It's saying there's something wrong with not accepting no as an answer.
Sure.
And like that's what I think that's what the point of this is. Like
he does,
and he does like Arash every time somebody says no to him, he backs off. And like I think that is what the film is trying to get across. Is like the reason you're not like the reason that Hossein, the father, wasn't killed the first time that he met the girl was because when what was her name? The Ati, the prostitute, when she says no, he lets her go. So like, the girl like faces him down a bit on the street there, but she gets away and she's like, all right, you can go, whatever. And he runs away, like she's trying to just scare him a little bit, like don't step across the line, and then he does, and she kills him for it. So I think that's kind of the whole point of this. But anyway, I'm getting off topic.
Yes.
In terms of supporting characters, I think you guys have both made very good points about a lot of these characters. Ian, I think you perhaps maybe I misheard you, but like I think you perhaps mistakenly said speaking of them as the parents, but I think that's a really good point.
The parental figures,
because the Ati, who plays the prostitute of the movie, is a very maternal character towards the girl at a certain point in this, and I think that's a really interesting dynamic that they have. In that it's really only one scene, but when she tries to like take her in her wake, and then like right after she kills Hossein, they like drag the body out to the street together and like go in there, like they're trying to make sure. Yeah, they're trying to make sure that each of them are all right. But yeah, I think the supporting characters.
There's a Freudian slip on my part,
but it worked perfectly. I'm glad that you said it. I'm sorry to bring it back up,
but no, good call.
But
I'm
like,
embarrassed.
But I think that the supporting characters in this are really good and perhaps the best part of the movie.
I'll add one thing.
Other than style.
Well, yeah, maybe it bleeds over, but I mean, the city itself could be again because it's all it's run down. They go to like the rundown powers, the old power plant, and all like she's like the desolate streets and all that.
I will say,
the rooftops.
Like I like the city a lot. It has personality, but it also feels very empty to me.
That's because that's the point, and
there's vampires running around.
Maybe,
well,
but it doesn't feel super lived in. I guess I'll say it does have personality, which I give it credit for.
It feels too lived in, as in people lived there once and then left.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, like this is going to play into style for sure because it almost feels like a ghost town, a la the spaghetti western style they're trying to go for.
Did you see all those dead bodies in the creek? I mean, that's where half the population is.
Yeah, that's where they all are.
But
it's going to be ones all around.
One for secondary
supporting,
for me. Yep.
For secondary characters. And Scotty, why don't you continue speaking with a dialogue?
All right. So I mean, it was fine. Like maybe like we said this a bit because of all the foreign things we've been doing. Like I thought the translation was fine. I guess like it wasn't super snappy or strong. In parts, there were some highlights, don't get me wrong. Yes, there were some good interactions here and there, especially when it tied into thematic elements that we spoke about earlier. So, like, I have no problem with it whatsoever. I'll probably give it, like, a fine 1. It's just that it wasn't as standout as some of the stuff we've seen, like, comparatively. But in no way am I saying it was bad or poorly done or didn't make sense or anything like that. Just that maybe it was, like, one of the lesser points of the film. And as we just alluded to, like, the next question is probably one of the strongest points. So, like, I'll give it a middle of the road, like fine 1. Nothing wrong, but nothing too stand out unless you guys can think of something that stood out to you.
Especially when watching a foreign language film, it kind of had the feeling of I don't mean either of these, but improv or mumblecore, where it felt just so
everyone's like worn down to like whatever.
Yeah, but so generic regular language at times.
Yeah,
I wouldn't ever say this is a flowery film when it comes to the languages. If anything, it's too realistic to the point of like there's scenes where
like mundane as hell. I guess we'll say
say a piece of dialogue and then like they're just on opposite sides of the room for a while, and it's like like I guess stylistically it works, but I'm probably gonna give it a 1-2 because I can't judge it correctly. Sure. As it's a foreign language film, but
for what was there, though, right?
Yeah,
I think we're saying
it worked for me.
So I'm probably going to give this a 1 as well. It is a quiet movie. There's a lot of silences and things like that. I think that the dialogue that is there is pretty solid, and there are definitely some standout moments for me, which is why I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah.
If it was like okay dialogue and there were no like standout scenes or dialogues, then I'd probably give it a 0. But there are
that's basically
some
what I was
moments that are
saying
really
too.
good.
Yeah.
You know, there are conversations between Arash and Hossein, his father, that are good. You know, there's like really tense moments with the drug dealer guy that dies pretty early. So I'm gonna give it a 1. There's nothing like super deep about the dialogue. There's nothing like super.
It's kind of what I was getting at too.
Intriguing about it, but it does work for me, and it pretty much always works when there is dialogue.
I'm going to give it the benefit because it didn't ever stand out to be negative,
and it was never it was never bad.
But it's funny that the guy who dies first had the most instance of life to the dialogue.
He had the most like bombastic personality, I guess we're saying, in terms of and what he said. Yes, true.
So that's gonna be ones all around.
Yep.
And that's gonna move us to style, and I'm gonna talk about that. The style in this is easily the best part of it. It is so good, and not to say that other parts aren't good, but the style is so good.
Yes.
It makes you think that this movie is way better than it actually is, I think. It's filmed in black and white. The cinematography is out of this world good. It's just like some of the shots they get are amazing. Like I keep thinking of the shots down the hallway where you see like the light at the end and there's a person walking towards you. There's the skateboard scene where the girl is like skating towards you and you like see her getting closer with the cape flowing behind, like the we'll call it a cape flowing behind her. I don't know.
Cloak cape.
Like the hijab. It's not a hijab, right? It's whatever it is.
It starts with a CH.
Flowing behind her.
Charab or something like that.
You've got so many beautifully done scenes. I love the scene when they're in her room when Arash is high on E. She brings him back on the bringing him back on the skateboard is an amazingly shot scene.
Yep.
And then they go into her room and then she puts on a record, and that leads me into my next part.
Yeah.
The music in this is so fucking good.
Hell yeah, dude.
It's so good. It is like perfectly a mix of like spaghetti western / like
80s modern pop.
Yeah. Exactly. Like 80s modern pop, I guess is a really good way to describe it. Like the music is incredible. And it nails that like spaghetti western style without being an actual western, and like in terms of like doing that in a horror genre film is and it's like every time I thought I was the most impressed I was going to be with this movie, it one-upped itself.
Yeah,
I can't say enough about how good it looked and felt to be watching this movie. So I'll cut it off there. I could probably talk for another 20 minutes, but I won't. I'll let you guys go.
No, man, I mean, basically what you said is testament to why I'm giving this the strongest one for sure. And even again, like I mentioned, some of the desolate shots of the city were gorgeous in their desolation, the way they were framed and where it was. And I think there was also a nice shot where it's either sunrise or sunset. I couldn't tell. It was in black and white, but the clouds are moving over the city, over the abandoned power plant and all that, and everything you just mentioned. And yeah, the soundtrack is fucking stellar. I kind of want to check it out, try to see if someone has it posted somewhere. But yeah, it matched perfectly well on both fronts, like you said. So I'm giving it the strongest of one, and I will just echo what you said. Yeah, it almost makes you think this movie is better than it sort of is. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but the style is so impressive. It sort of pulls the wool over your eyes for maybe initially.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about it as a horror movie, especially since this is MOTS-O-Ween.
Smart.
At times, it's indie, Juno kind of quality to it. But then it sometimes goes into straight horror. There are jump scares in this. Not
one or two, maybe.
Yeah, that's
and
that's
not
right.
your standard definition of jump scares either.
The fact is, that as a vampire, she can move faster than humans. So you'll see her following a character. And then she'll appear in front of them. And it does add to it does have those elements. So they're not intense or I don't think cheap jump scares, but they still work. So I don't know. It reminds me of kind of. like a Jennifer's Body or something like that in
I
a
can't
horror
believe you
movie
just
thing.
referenced that film, man. But I get what you mean.
But stylistically, so much like that's what elevates it, as we said. But as a horror movie itself, it's good. It's not like I wouldn't go in saying watch this because it's a horror movie. I'd say watch this because it's a cool, stylish indie film that has horror elements to it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm still going to give it a 1 because the style is, as you guys mentioned, fantastic.
Yeah. I wanted to mention a couple other things that I forgot, but I had made notes of earlier. The shot, like cinematographically. No.
In terms of cinematography.
Speaking in terms of cinematography, the shots of the oil derricks kept like continually showing up. Really got me. Those were great. And I also wanted to mention the withdrawal scenes that we talked about earlier with the father. Really good. Very much put me in the mind frame of like Train Spotting. That really got me because when you can show that kind of not only emotion but like mindset and physical, and you can like almost feel some kind of physical pain that the person on the screen is going through. It's really well done. You don't see it done well all that often. I think it was really well done in this film.
Yep.
So I'm going to give it the strongest of ones for style. I think that was easily the best part of this film.
I would concur.
And sounds like you guys would agree with me there. So that is going to take us to recommendation. Ian.
I was wavering on this, except I realized when I was watching this at work, because it was pretty much an empty computer lab. Yeah. I called one of my coworkers off from who's watching Godzilla. Heathen.
Fool.
The new one?
Wait, which one?
Yeah.
The newest one. So I called him over and I'm like, you need to see this scene. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's the scene where in the right at the beginning when he's driving his car and like the spaghetti western soundtrack is playing. Like, this is absolutely gorgeous. It needs to be seen. And I'm going to say that about this film, that if anything, don't go in expecting the deepest or grandest of films. Just go in and enjoy it for a piece of art.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pretty much echo that as well. It may not be the most engaging horror film, or it has horror elements, but just for what it is as a work of art in terms of film, yeah, fucking A, I would recommend it. It's just gorgeous, like we said, and the soundtrack matches perfectly, and just for that alone, and yeah, the story is fine enough, but as a whole package, it's something worth watching.
Yeah, it'll for whatever it lacks in terms of story, it'll engage you heavily. Like this, I mean, this isn't a super long movie. I think it's an hour 45.
Yeah,
or something
like that. Yeah.
But it kept me engaged the entire time just through sheer stylistic effort, and the story is also it's fine. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. And I think all the other elements of it, as we've talked about, do a good job of, keeping you engaged. And I think that honestly, this is one of my favorite horror movies that I've seen in a while. Even if it's not like super horror-y, I really appreciated this film for what it was and what it could possibly, I mean, this is 5 years old at this point, but what it could possibly bring about in terms of genre blending stuff in the future. So I'm looking forward to more stuff from Annalily Amirpour. I know that she has done a few other things since this movie, notably an episode of Legion last year, which we all love.
Yep.
Had to give a shout out.
For sure.
And yeah, so unless anybody else has anything else.
No, why don't you give us a wrap up, or what does that leave us?
We all gave it a 9.
Yep.
I'll take off 1 point for a somewhat not a completely perfect narrative, not a completely all there narrative. It could have done a little bit better.
Like you said,
in that
good
regard.
but not great, but still good.
Yeah. We all love the style. I think that the idea of putting this into a spaghetti western format in terms of a vampire movie was kind of brilliant and like very worthy of the Italians.
Sure.
In their in their heyday, Sergio Leone, I feel like would be proud of this movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's gonna be a 9 overall. And,
damn solid, man. Fucking A.
We'll see you guys on the next episode. From MOTS-O-Ween, I've been your host, Steve Ramosi, joined tonight by Jonathan Manzer.
Beware the skateboarding vampires.
And Scott Thurlow.
Boy walks home alone at night. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Scott Thurlow. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.